So if you had to guess, what do you think would be the hardest part about being the youngest child? I decided to try to answer this question, and I was not prepared for what I found. I was expecting the standard stuff of like, pressures and stereotypes or family dynamics. Instead, over and over what I heard was, I feel like I'm invisible. So I decided to try to figure out a couple of things. And first of all, I was like, okay, what's that like? So I know what it's like a little bit because I've experienced a little bit of that myself. After we figured that out, we're gonna talk about why. Why do so many people respond with this and say that this is what it feels like? And how does that affect us later in our adult life? Lastly, we're gonna talk about possible solutions for this. Whether you're the youngest child or not, this can affect anybody. And also maybe some ways where you can help others who are experiencing this. First of all, I would be a complete toad if I did not say that I'm not an expert on this. I'm only speaking from my own experience and the experiences of others that have talked with me. So what's it feel like? Well, as the youngest child, we're always trying to be involved with the big kids. And more often than not, we're kind of dismissed, whether we're too young or too inexperienced or what have you. This can often make us feel inadequate. For example, most times when we accomplish something, it's not really novel anymore because so many others above us have already done it and they've completed that. When we accomplish that, we observe the reaction that our family has to our accomplishment, and we gauge that with how they reacted with the others in our family. And if there's inconsistencies there, then we'll assume that it's because of us, or it's our fault, or something we did, or something about us. And it's interesting because my family never really understood why I didn't like watching like the old home family videos. Like I get like 2 minutes at the very end of like hours of footage. Like, the pets practically get more airtime than I do. Okay, not quite, but you see my point. It's like every child that comes along gets like this huge show reel, and then for the last like 2, and then I'm the very last, it's just like, that's it. Like just, oh, here comes Austin yet. And you just kind of tag him on the end. And now it's like, whatever, like I don't care anymore. Like I'm not gonna waste my energy being annoyed by that. I'm gonna put it into something useful. But when you're, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, growing up, and you see that, I didn't know how to make that connection. It just kind of confused me, and it just reinforced what I was already feeling of like, I'm a leftover, I'm a tag on, like I'm not that important, and all that stuff. I didn't know how to explain my feelings. Like how do you explain that to someone when you're 8? It's like, I didn't know what I was feeling. I was just confused, and these like situations were proving my feelings correct, it felt like. When that would happen, I would tend to withdraw to a place of safety, which was usually inside. So I would just kind of withdraw, put a whole bunch of walls out there so no one could reach me, and then I had some semblance of safety. And I want to be clear here, this is not like a pity party or a video of me lamenting my terrible struggles. Like, I'm making this so we can better understand each other. I wouldn't trade any of this. Like I'm grateful for the pain and some of the struggles that this brought and the negative belief systems, because it's forced me to have a much broader understanding of my emotions and a much broader vocabulary of how to talk about them and communicate them and process them. And that's really valuable. And I see that now in my life where I can walk with other people and help them process things or go through things, because I have gained that ability. Speaking of negative belief systems, when it comes to feeling invisible, especially in extreme cases, you most likely will internalize a sense of not being important to others. It's almost like you have a sense that you don't matter to other people or maybe it's like you don't have a place. I don't know. That's the best way I can explain it. You feel kind of out of place, like something's missing. And if this goes too far, it can develop into very terrible belief systems of like, you don't matter to your parents. And then that can morph into even worse things like, I'm insufficient and insignificant. Again, those are in very extreme cases. I'm not saying that if you have a younger sibling that they're automatically gonna feel these things. I'm speaking mostly from what I've heard other people say, also just some of my own experience, but a lot of these can tend to be exaggerated by people's emotions and experiences. So I wanna keep that in mind as well. And this can be really hard for other people to understand because they'll say things to us like, that's not true. And that's kind of the problem because we know it's not true, but what we know and what we feel tend to be two different things. And when those don't align and there's incongruency there, it can create a fragmentation between what we know and what we feel, and between our head and our heart, often our heart will win. And then there becomes a disconnect between what words you hear and what you feel. And they stop linking. And it's like that a little bit for everybody. Yeah. But I think it can be, the fragmentation can be a little bit more severe with something like this. And remembering that what you perceive to be true is true for you can be really difficult in a case like this, because you'll look back on it and be like, that's not how it was. Like, now that you can remember it, it's like, so why do I have all these emotions tied with this? Why is so much anger here? That's not like, I understand it now. It's tough because what you perceive it as is true right then and there. That's why it never works to like tell someone to snap out of it or blaming them for something like this, because sometimes what you say and what you communicate are two different things. It's kind of like if you tell me a joke and you intend it to be funny and you think it's hilarious, and I don't interpret it as funny, I'm not gonna laugh at it. Like that's what it, like, sorry, but like my perception of your joke is that it is not funny and that it is stupid. So it's like, for you to get angry at me for not laughing at your joke is kind of dumb. It doesn't do anything. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, change the way I perceive life? Another interesting part about this is mirroring, because we all grow up mirroring each other. But for the invisible child, they don't have an image that's reflected back on them because no one sees them. Again, like this is not universal. This is just some of the perceptions of the people that I've talked to. They say that like it can leave them feeling very disconnected and very empty. So if these things keep getting reinforced and the belief systems that are negative in the child's life keep getting reinforced, the feelings of this can be inadequacy, insignificance, passivity can be a really big one, because the child grows up believing these negative thought patterns and they're reinforced by by other people's behavior. And so they can grow up feeling like their thoughts, opinions, and ideas just don't matter. The more I dug into this, like what it feels like, the more I found that there's like a silent community that is willing to speak in certain places. And if you get in just the right spot, you'll get absolutely flooded with what these people are feeling. But that really got me thinking even more about the next part of this video, about like what causes this feeling? Like, where does it come from? And how does it affect us in our adult life? And I think it's safe to say the youngest are not purposefully treated this way. But that's kind of the problem, isn't it? Like in having this whole conversation is that it feels like this happens automatically. And one of the ways that this can happen is the youngest can tend to get the leftovers. And I don't mean like food or resources or like even hand-me-downs or anything like that. I'm talking about the roles in the family. The longer a family's been together, the more rigid each person's role has become within that family. And by the time the youngest child shows up, the family has established a pretty consistent way of operating. And what happens in this situation is generally the youngest child steps in to fill whatever role is left and fill in the gaps of whatever the family unit is lacking. So imagine a family that's all happy-go-lucky and they kind of set aside their responsibilities. In that case, hypothetically, the youngest child would potentially feel the need or desire to step in and be the responsible one for the family. Or another scenario is a family that's very conflict oriented. There's like palpable tension in the home. And in this case, one of the roles that the youngest can take up is to be the mediator, or to be a jokester, to bring entertainment and laughter to kind of break the tension or take the attention onto themselves. Don't get carried away with this stuff. I'm just saying these are some of the things that I've found. And I want to reiterate that over and over and over, because the last thing I want you to do is to take this as information and use it as ammunition to run off with it and start spewing ideas and end up hurting someone. And a really interesting topic here is like what this looks like in later adult years. So we may be very easily triggered when someone ignores us or doesn't take our words into account. And it can really cause these emotional flashbacks of very confused proportion. And so for some of us, it might remind us of the hole it feels like is in our life that we just can't quite fill. Another one is that sometimes we can over-identify with other people and their identities, or their lack of identities would maybe be a better word. For me, one of the biggest things that would like cause flashbacks or like unwanted feelings is like if I would be left out of something, and all those things kind of resurface, and I begin wondering if they see me the way that I felt for all those years. We've kind of got the information out there. We kind of know a little bit what we're talking about and maybe some of the experiences that other people are having. And so it's like, okay, what do we do with all this? And the first thing I want to say is you are the one responsible to do the work. No one's going to do it for you. And the worst possible thing you could do at this point is to go into the victim mentality and like go look for pity. That'll only intensify your situation, and that'll push you even farther out. That was a big one for me, man. Whew. Victim mode, name tag right here. And that's why it's a really good idea to have someone kind of walk with you through this, because the way out is in, meaning that you have to begin looking at your inner world. You have to slowly begin the process of facing your past and the pain that's there, and facing it head on. You have to process it and rehash it, because if you don't, it'll just hang in limbo there. And the littlest thing will make it flare up again. And it can be very, very hard and exhausting work, very emotional work as well. And that's why it's really, really awesome to have someone with you in that, because they can keep you straight in that, and they can keep you from getting off course or slipping into the victim mentality. And as you begin this path of like, you know, going through your pain and beginning to find self-acceptance, there's many reasons why you should find self-acceptance, but I don't know, one of the biggest, most terrifying reasons is that when you experience something painful in your past, if it's traumatic enough, either all at once or slowly over time, it can actually freeze your emotional maturity in that specific area right there at that age. And that's really freaky. Like, that's really scary. So like in a very specific situation or portion of your emotions, that can actually be frozen in time if something specific happened to freeze it there, something painful that just caused you to close it up and you moved on and you didn't look back at it. And I found that for myself, as I began going back into my past and looking at these old past hurts, I wasn't processing them as a 21-year-old. I was processing them as a 6-year-old, because that's where my emotions were still at this point. I remember specific time or specific memory, and I remember exactly where I was. I remember exactly what was said, exactly what I felt, exactly what I did afterward. Like, it is so clear in my mind. And when I go back to rethink about that, or like to process that or write about it, the reaction and the pain and the aggression, like everything just flares up. Like, I was 6, like my sibling doesn't even remember it. And like it just launches forward. It's like, where did all of this come from? And it's like, I shouldn't be feeling this way. Like, that's not what they actually meant, because you're older now, your logical part of you can reason that and explain it away. But it's like, no, like that's what it felt like. And as a 6-year-old, that is still what it feels like. That's really tough. That's a tough scenario, and it's hard to get through that. And to do that, you have to put yourself back in your shoes of when you were that age, of where you were, what happened. You have to reprocess that. You shouldn't stay stuck there. Like, you need to move out of that, but it is important to go back to it. I don't know, this sounds kind of weird, and I didn't want to try it at first, but one of the coolest ways that I found to do that is to have a conversation with your younger self. Basically, you just get 2 chairs, set them up facing each other, sit in one, and then imagine your younger self sitting in the other one. And it's just freaky, because I can picture exactly what I looked like, and I can picture exactly how I would talk and sound and what I would do if I tried to explain the situation to my younger self. And the first time I did it, I was like sitting there, I was like, what would I say? What would I actually say to make my younger 6-year-old self get through it and process it and understand what happened? Because like, I knew that no matter what I said, my 6-year-old self would just be like, you know, like, whatever, okay, cool. Like, and it wouldn't actually get it. So we've been mostly focusing on what to do if you are that person, if you do feel invisible. But if you think you have a younger sibling or someone else, a friend, whatever, that you think falls into that, one of the best things you can do is to find little moments to make them shine, and to bring them into the spotlight, even just for a little bit. Be careful not to embarrass them, or to overhype this situation and make it feel artificial. My friends have done amazing at this, making sure I knew that people cared about me and that people respected me and appreciated what I did and what they thought about me. Especially one of my friends, he would take specific time to pull me aside and be like, hey, the other day, this person really appreciated what you did over here, or this person said this about you, about how much they really, really liked that, or they really cared about you, or they appreciated how you let out that day. And he would do this all the time, and it was so like unusual. Like, I had never thought that people actually observed me in that way. It was so bizarre. Like, in fact, it felt wrong to hear that, because it's like no, that's not me. I can't be that person. There's no way people see me that way. And like, I can't explain how much that means to me. Like, especially when it's something I'm proud about. Like, okay, I could care less if you compliment me on like my hairstyle or my dressing style or something. Like baloney. It does not affect anything. On the other hand, you compliment me sincerely about something I'm deeply passionate about. For example, like if you compliment me on my ability to reach people emotionally at very low periods of their life, like that's something I'm super passionate about. And so like if you compliment me on stuff like that, like I'm gonna be moonwalking the whole way home. Pull them out and let them know that you see them. And you see what they're doing. You know, we talked about the one side of it where it's kind of the negatives of what's bad or what's not good. But there's also the flip side of it. Like I mentioned before, there are a lot of benefits and pluses to being the youngest and having gone through these trials and gone through these annoying things. Sadly, I don't have time to go much more in depth. I'm way over time anyway. But if you're curious, check out this video. I go a little bit of a different direction and talk a little bit more about my personal experience as being the youngest child and kind of what that was like.